Welcome everyone to our fourth episode of our podcast, Tuesdays Against Execution. Today is the day. Today, more than all the days, we need to speak up after the latest horrible executions carried out by the Iranian regime. And I would like to especially dedicate that session to Mehdi, Asani, and Behrouz Asani, who had brutally and in totally silent executed last 27 July. And use that platform to extend my solidarity and my words, my heart to their family, and to tell them to trust us and to stay strong. And also, I know I cannot imagine that it is difficult to find peace in such a horrible time, but it is now when we must be stronger than ever. So let me also to dedicate this episode to Saed, who has been also last 26th July forcibly displaced on exile from his prison, Ghezel prison. Unfortunately, our tentative to stop that displacement failed, and he is now incommunicated, as many of the prisoners in the same Ghezel prison have been displaced, and no news is available about their condition, their location. So we strongly support them, and we call upon the international community to stop that incredible situation. So that said, it's our honor today, my special privilege to host for this episode Professor Javaid Rehman. I hope to have a good pronunciation of your name, Professor. Why I'm so happy, especially happy to have him, because he is first of all a specialist in Islamic law and constitutional Muslim constitutionalism, better said, at Brunel University in London, and he is the former special rapporteur of the United Nations on Iran and on the situation of human rights in Iran from 2018 to 2024. So who better than him is in a special position to tell us what is happening today and how the regime degenerated until now. In particular, I would like to make reference to his last report as a special rapporteur, which he titled "Atrocity Crimes," in reference to the grave violation of human rights carried out by the regime on 1981, 1982, and 1988. So many years of atrocities, actually. So, and he well documented the arbitrary detention and the displacement of people, the unlawful execution in that report, So, Professor, I'm going to give you the floor, and my first question is, at the time of your mandate, what was your major concern in relation to collect data, for example, and to how to operationalize such report in order to protect human rights in Iran? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I am really grateful and I feel privileged to be speaking to you. And it is a sad moment. And I begin by expressing my very sincere condolences and sympathies to the families of Mehdi Hassani and Behrouz Hassani, who, as you just mentioned, were tragically executed 2 days back on 27th of July, 2025. They were political prisoners and they were executed in secret. They were tortured, they were subjected to ill treatment, including beatings and prolonged solitary confinement. And there were threats to their families to force them to make confessions. And if I could just say, the trial, the so-called trial, was completely unfair. It was arbitrary. It was a summary trial. And it was a denial of any form of due process or fairness, which we call it in international law. They were completely denied. They were denied access to lawyers. And they were convicted by this notorious revolutionary court based in Tehran. And if I can also add that I was shocked and heartbroken to see the video clip of the daughter of Mr. Hassani, Mariam, confirming her father's execution. And these executions, in effect, reflect a continuation, a sad continuation of summary, arbitrary, and extrajudicial executions by the Iranian regime. And in my view, they are crimes against humanity that are conducted by the regime. And as we are discussing, tragically, there are a significant number of political prisoners who are tortured and forcibly removed, as you mentioned. They are put on death row, and many face imminent executions. And you're absolutely right that the international community must take action. International community must not remain silent, as unfortunately it has done for many, many years, particularly when the crimes against humanity and genocide, in my mind, and I've documented that in my final report, when crimes against humanity and genocide were being committed during the 1980s, and in particular during the 1988 massacre of political prisoners, the international community stood silent. And this must be stopped now. And the Iranian regime and the supreme leader must be held accountable for these atrocity crimes. Now, in terms of your question as to what were my concerns, what was my major concerns when I was the Special Rapporteur between 2018 to 2024, my major concerns obviously stemmed and started from the arbitrary deprivation of life. There was arbitrariness, the unlawful implementation of the death penalty. That was the main source of concern and worry for me. But then the past 6 years has seen a lot of violations of human rights. We saw women's rights being violated, the human dignity of girls and women. And then we had the killing of Gina Mahsa Amini, which led to the Women Life Freedom Movement. And then another big concern was the treatment of ethnic and religious minorities in Iran, and that occupied me for a long time. So these were the main concerns, and I documented all of that in quite some detail in my reports.
I know I know very well the report, and that's why I was interested also into your concern to collect that. And sometimes we forget as a jurist that what we are collecting, so those data actually are people. They are not just number, despite the regime treat them as the number. So this is very hard to do, something very hard to do, but we must do that kind of work. So, and it is also true that unfortunately, normally states, any kind of state, including those calling themselves as democratic, they don't use to amplify or implement or even taking in consideration the report of special rapporteurs of UN. So what was the reaction to your report by the Republic of Iran?
Well, they condemned me, they attacked me, they rejected me. They always said that this was politically motivated mandate, so that they refused to engage with me. But you see, the tragedy of all that was that when they adopted this negative attitude, they were not actually questioning the substance of what I was saying. All the time, they were not engaging with me. They refused. I mean, they never allowed access for myself to the country. I could never visit Iran as the special rapporteur. And indeed, my predecessors were also not allowed. They also rejected all I said about violations of rights. So, for example, the arbitrary deprivation of life. Because if you look at the Iranian Penal Code and if you look at the Iranian law, there are currently over 80 offenses that carry the death penalty, and it is written there. And as a special rapporteur, my main concern was to criticize the law and the policy because they were abusing human dignity and human life, because for them, execution is a means to repression. So anyone who challenges them, they attack them. And they had no regard that this position that I held was the position to which I was appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. I was a mandate holder, so they should have shown respect. But instead of looking at the substance of my concerns, and my concerns are the concerns of the Iranian people, So they never looked at the substance, and they continued to reject the report, not because they could find fault with the substance, but because they started arguing all the time that this is politically motivated.
Yeah, thank you very much for saying that. I apologize for any disturbing noises, but it seems there is something, some work, structural work into the building. So I really apologize for that.
It's absolutely fine.
So it is interesting the fact that you underline that the special mandate is defined as a political tool, because it is actually the general concern, especially when the special rapporteurs speak up more than a tribunal, because they mandate in some way is ample in carrying out investigation. So, and I thank you very much for making reference to the Iranian criminal system, because in our past episodes and in general, we used to refer to the lack of conformity and the lack of respect for international human rights law. But what is interesting here, from my point of view, and as academic with a strong curiosity on Islamic law, having studied in the past Islamic law, actually, with one of the father of the Statute of International Criminal Court. What tell the Islamic law about the situation, the abuse of law in Iran right now, to be clear? Because, we must speak frankly and tell that some people think that it is the Sharia which is in place, so it is in some way normal. It's absurd, right? So we take that opportunity to say, to summarize, what tells Islamic law about the respect of human dignity, for example, and the right to fair trial, the right to have a pre-established tribunal, for example, and the access to justice. Please.
Yeah, so, Islamic law is unfortunately used by certain political elements in certain states to violate human rights and human dignity, see. And I've just mentioned to you that within Iran, in their criminal law, there are 80 offenses which carry the death penalty. They violate the rights and dignity of girls and women. They enforce hijab, and if women decide not to wear the hijab, the compulsory hijab, they use violence against that. They violate the dignity of ethnic and religious minorities. So how can they justify that on the basis of Islam or Islamic law? This is so totally contradictory to any human dignity. Do you see what I mean? If you start torturing girls and women, beating them up, or if you start executing juveniles as they do, if you start publicly executing people. So I think that these states, and Iran is an extreme example, but there are many others who use religion for their own political ends, you see. They do not take the humanitarian aspect of Islam, but because we have to remember that the Islamic Empire was very attractive. It was one of the main empires in the world, and that cannot be built just on force. People have to feel.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just to add one more element about that. I'm based in Spain, so 3/4 of Spain, but especially the south, is originated from Islam. So the part of the south, especially, is we have including words deriving from.
So and so there is enormous amount of humanitarian and welcoming approaches in the Islamic jurisprudence. So these politicians or these regimes, they pick on those aspects which suit them, because they want to repress people, they want to subjugate people, they want to terrorize people, and the best tool for them is to use religion. And if I, without distracting too much, if I can just say that I come from Pakistan, and Pakistan is also very problematic in that sense, because in Pakistan, for example, we have the blasphemy laws which carry the death penalty, you see, and it is all justified in the name of Islam. How can these political elite not understand that Islam is such a humanitarian, such a charitable religion, that it expanded, it almost, as you mentioned, it conquered, much of the world because of the positive attributes. So I think this is a narrow vision to just say, okay, well, you go back to certain practices 1400 years ago, and you just look at the narrow elements of what you perceive as it was Islam, and to look at the wider aspect of religion. I think that is where the problem is. And unfortunately, the Iranian regime is using Islam, the Shia Islam, for their own political ends, which really results in repression of people and in terms of violating the dignity of people.
Yeah, thank you very much for saying that. I think it's crucial to make that reference, and thank you also to make reference to blasphemy law. I have a very great interest in that. I wrote also on the transfer of blasphemy law concept inside the United Nations with the defamation of religion concept.
That's right.
The Human Rights Council during more than 10 years has been influenced in some way to try to adopt. And initially, in its work, they adopted a resolution on the prohibition of defamation of religion, and then that concept of defamation of religion evolved into the respect of freedom of religion. But it's quite interesting.
It is very important, because as I gave you this example of my own country, it is just to highlight the politicization of Islam. Because you have to remember that this law was introduced by a military dictator, General Ziaul Haq, in the time, the 11 years that he was in power. But he used religion to actually repress people and to stay in power. The idea was not to spread Islam, but people are Muslims anyway. But it is to repress those and to, because these groups, the minorities, are vulnerable. So they were targeted. And that was the unfortunate reality. And now that law is so entrenched because over time, the radical sections of the communities, they become so powerful that even to talk about reform creates a lot of problems. And I mean, we are digressing too much, but that is where the position is in terms of Islam. And I'll just repeat that Islam is a great religion. All religions have to be interpreted now in a way that they comply with the evolving values of our human rights. And Islam is no different. Islam can accommodate everyone's rights, children's rights, women's rights, rights of the elderly people, rights of the disabled. So there isn't a problem. But in the case of Iran, you see that they have created problems for everyone. I mean, as I mentioned, the situation with women and girls. I mean, they torture them, they brutalize them for their political ends. That is not Islamic practice. I mean, if you want to see evidence, look around the Muslim world. Where are women being brutalized in the way it's happening in Iran?
Yeah, at all. This is not Islamic law, no law at all. Thank you for your words and to be so specific, and also to recall the situation of, if we want to say that, more in defense groups inside the prisoner groups, women especially, and children. And let me just make a call, especially directed to women in this side of the globe. Let me use the term West just as a geographically situation, because I don't really like the division between South, North, West, and East. This is just a political tool to separate people, let me say that. And I call upon the women to stand up, especially on the side of women of Iran, because women of Iran are the example for women searching for freedom, empowerment, and to in conformity, in a coherence with their ideas of freedom and liberty. So the other point I would like to ask you, if I can, sorry, I don't want to abuse of your time because I know it's very late.
It's absolutely fine. Yeah, go ahead.
But this is a very great opportunity to have you with us. So in relation to the massacre of 1988, I would like for a moment to return to that tragic events because we are currently in the anniversary of the massacre. So what happened after your report denunciating what happened? I mean, inside the international community, did you note any kind of reaction, any kind of progress into the engagement from the international community in the fight for justice for what happened in 1988?
Yeah. So you have to, if you would allow me to set the stage as to, why I wrote this report and what happened while I was writing the report and subsequently. So I think that there was a lot of evidence already of the brutality and violence that took place immediately after the Iranian Revolution. I mean, there are lots of sources. For example, the Amnesty International, many other international NGOs. There are victims who are still alive, who lost family or other relatives. So there was this information there, but for political reasons, the international community never was able to bring everything together. So, the mandate that I hold was there at that time as well. It is one of the oldest mandates, which was set up by the then Human Rights Commission. So, but the tragedy of all that was that when thousands and literally tens of thousands of political prisoners were tortured and forcibly disappeared and executed in a summary, arbitrary, extrajudicial manner, the international community kept silent. There was information. They kind of knew what was happening, but all of the avenues of the international society did not take action, including any concrete action. So this, I felt, was my legal and moral obligation towards the people of Iran to highlight and document this gross atrocity, which I regarded as atrocity crimes, So I started, when I started my mandate, it was one of the important agendas that I would work and I would document a report on the 1988 massacre. That was right at the beginning of my mandate in 2018 that I said that I would do it. And I was committed to bringing together as much evidence that I could produce. And as I conducted my study, I found out that there were, the findings that I had. I felt alarmed and shocked at the summary, arbitrary, and extrajudicial executions that took place, the torture that took place, the ill treatment of, as I said, literally tens of thousands of political opponents since 1979, but more particularly 1981 to 1982. And then during the massacre of 1988. And after having documented these crimes, I took the view that these amounted to crimes against humanity of murder and extermination, as well as genocide. And this was from the period 1979 and 1988. And I also reported that these executions included those of women. Some of them were reportedly raped before their executions. And these executions also included a very large number of children. So the documents are there in that report. I provided original documents. And the tragic thing is that the Iranian regime itself took so much of a position of portrayal that we are killing these people. I mean, there are newspaper cuttings, there is other forms of evidence coming from the state itself that they're committing these crimes. And yet the international community has not been able to prosecute these individuals, So the atrocity crimes, in particular the 1988 massacre, as I wrote in my report, represents the commission of the worst and most egregious human rights abuses of our living memory, whereby high-ranking state officials actively planned, ordered, and committed crimes against humanity and genocide. And so I came to the conclusion, and my recommendations to the international community was that these crimes are ongoing crimes. For example, you would know that enforced disappearances are continuing crimes until the fate of the victim is known. So these thousands, tens of thousands of people have enforceably disappeared. Many of them were, it is reported, buried in mass graves, but their families don't know. So these are enforced disappearances. They are continuing crimes. And it is an obligation on the international community to investigate, to prosecute those who have been involved in these crimes. Yeah. And that was my key recommendation, that the international community must now investigate these crimes. Who was responsible? Why did they kill prisoners? As you know, that this is a violation of human rights, but also international humanitarian law, that persons who are detained can never be tortured or killed and executed. But there were summary, arbitrary, and extrajudicial executions at the order of the then supreme leader. So that is where I was. I said that there should be investigation. There should be an international accountability mechanism set up to investigate these crimes against humanity and genocide. And you asked me about the reaction. I think that was your question. The reaction of the Iranian regime was that they could not take it. They could not take it. They immediately started condemning me. They attacked me, threatened me, and they have lots of proxies who also threatened me. I mean, if you look at the report, and at the bottom of that, there is also allegations against me. So the regime and its proxies made false and fabricated allegations against me that I have been corrupt, I have been taking money, I had an agenda. If I had an agenda
here that the special mandate of United Nations are unpaid role. We must underline that.
Yeah. And I can tell you that if I had an agenda, if I wanted to take money, a regime would pay me a lot more. I mean, they wanted to shut up everything. They would be happy. So it was purely for the cause of people. People who have suffered for so long, And it has been an honor for me, and I take a lot of pride that ultimately I was able to write that report while I was the UN mandate holder and the United Nations. I'm very grateful that they allowed that report to be published during my time as the mandate holder. And I can tell you today that I have done this work, and I am 100% sure that history will decide that we are on the right side of justice and fairness. And all of these allegations by the regime and its proxies that either have taken money when I was writing the report or afterwards, they are so fabricated, they are so wrong. It is a sign of their desperation that they brought all of these allegations against me.
Of
And
course.
I hope that the world will come to recognize the value of this work at some point.
Yeah, of course, and that this is in some little way the fact that we host you today is also to give recognition more than ever to your report and your work done until 2024. Of course, also we need to recall also that you carried out the work during the pandemic, so even hard to collect
It was,
data.
I mean, pandemic did, with all UN work, everything became so much more difficult, and we could not access the access to the victims as frequently or as easily as we could. A lot of things had to change, and pandemic brought its own problems. Like, for example, in the case of Iran, there were a lot of issues. How the supreme leader and the regime manipulated the system for their own advantage. And you may remember that Iran had one of the highest number of deaths during the pandemic. And so somebody has to take responsibility. Somebody has to take responsibility. And I think that crimes against humanity were committed by the regime and supreme leader at that time. And for that as well, the supreme leader and the elite at that time, or who are in power, must be held accountable. And that is why I have recommended that there must be accountability, because these people are not accountable to anybody. They have complete impunity. They have had impunity since they took charge in 1979, and that must end now. That is the claim of the victims, that they cannot go anymore. There has to be international action, and it has to be done now. And one other thing, if I may add, that there is a very strong link of the 1988 massacre to what is happening now, you see, because you may have heard that in the past few months, but more specifically since the war with Israel ended, the regime and its state media, particularly Fars outlet, which is connected to the IRGC, has been openly suggesting, and it was actually in one of the editorials, they have been openly suggesting and they have been praising what they perceive as a great achievement in 1988, and they are saying that this was something that they feel proud of, the regime and and those people associated. They want to repeat that with the current situation of political prisoners. So they want to commit crimes against humanity. They want to commit mass murders, summary arbitrary executions, as happened in 1988. And because no international action has been taken, nobody has been held accountable, they think that they can repeat it and that they will get away with these serious international crimes once more, as they gotten away in 1988.
Thank you, Professor, to put the accent over the link between the past and the present atrocity crimes. This is really important, something that we need to speak up and to call upon the attention of international community. I would like, and then I will ask you, please, to give a message, direct message to prisoners. But before, I would just to ask you a little last question, if I can. Because you mentioned the need, and I totally agree with you, to create a mechanism of investigation, perhaps similar to the mechanism of investigation to Syria, for example. I think we must start to underline that, because we are at the 80th anniversary of United Nations, and everywhere we are, everyone concerned about the lack of financial resources because of the current geopolitical situation. So what is your opinion in front of that necessity to create the investigation mechanism and the situation of geopolitical fight against the United Nations from some part of the globe, and from another part totally not interesting, seems, you know? We are in an era where it is more interesting to have the best tariff in trade than the best support to United Nations, if I can say. So what is your position about that particular situation? Thank you.
Yeah, you know, this is a very important question. This is a huge challenge. But, you know, I believe, and I hope that people like you in the human rights fraternity believe very strongly that a society is only workable, society only becomes effective when the essential dignity of every person is respected. So I say that in the case of Iran, Iranian people are lovely people. They have so much passion. They have so much commitment. They can be the beacon of the whole of the Middle East for progressive development. They can do so much, you know. They can bring so much energy to that region. But because that regime has been there since 1979, it has driven people away. It has driven those ambitions away. It has taken resources. It is corrupt. It has spent money. It consistently spends money on propping up various regimes. You mentioned Syria, but they have others. They supported Hezbollah. They supported Houthis. Their ideology is driven towards conflict. They don't want to bring peace, you know. And I must also add that this regime is not the only one. There are others as well, you know, in that region and many other regions. And you mentioned that they find a lot of allies, you know, in the developed world who would like them, you know. So the bottom line is that without respect for human rights and without respect for human dignity for all people, you know, men, women, children, people of all orientations, people of all faiths, all backgrounds, this world is not going to progress, you know. This world is not going to progress. We can talk about, oh, the tariffs. We can talk about elite states. We can talk about elite governments. But we are in it together. So I can just give you one example of the United Kingdom. I mean, it is a permanent member of the Security Council, one of the most developed states. You know, it has ruled over much of the world. But it is not an island unto itself, because now you see the crisis, the migration crisis, the refugee crisis, the boat people crisis. They have to deal with that. And the answer to dealing with the boat crisis is not to shut the doors, but to help people in the regions where they are struggling, So why are people becoming refugees? Why are they driven to risk their own lives in these boats to come to Great Britain and to the United Kingdom? Because they're desperate, They're desperate. So I think that this world has to come together, must have a vision, And I was discussing a similar subject just yesterday with some other human rights experts. And, if you look at the investment that the international community does on human rights issues, when compared to investing on wars and conflicts and other issues, human rights is a very minute investment, even in the context of the United Nations, the crisis that you mentioned. It's unfortunately not our priority. But I would say that those states and those governments and those societies which understand the value of what we are talking about, I think now is the challenge for them to say, well, human rights is going to be a priority. And the other important thing, if I can just add, the other priority is that, look, all the states have their own political agendas, There are political issues. They work for political issues. And I don't discard that, government have their, but human rights must be respected and taken objectively. We just don't continue with a regime just because it is run by our guys. They just follow what we say. So you know what I mean, in the Middle East, this is a crisis, So Iran is one regime, is a really nasty regime, but we have to think, states have to think that human rights must take priority if we have to advance, and therefore these political affiliations and these issues must be secondary to respecting human rights, and therefore I think that the Iranian regime has no place. They have no place in a dignified world, in a society which respects human rights, because for far too long they have been abusing people, and now the time has come for accountability, ending the impunity. And in my report, in my final report, I did make some recommendations as to what needs to be done. That was more specifically directed to the massacre of 1988 and the atrocity crimes in the 1980s. But what I think is that there have been some positive developments in that regard. So one is, and I feel privileged that I was involved in advocating for the setting up of the fact-finding mission for Iran, And if you see what has been happening, that they have progressed and they have developed. And I was very pleased to note that the United Nations Human Rights Council, they extended their mandate, but they also expanded the mandate. So they can look at and they can investigate and they can interrogate and they can work towards the eventual accountability for ongoing crimes. It is no longer just restricted to the women life freedom movement crimes. So I think that we have, in the absence of an specific international mechanism, we have the fact-finding mission on Iran, and I think that they can do some very important work in terms of documentation, and in terms of recording evidence, and in terms of accountability mechanism.
Thank you very much for your words and to underline all those points. And I would like to retain, if I can, one element of your, I really appreciate your words when you mentioned the ideologies, right? And the fact that we need to have a vision, no? So to me, from my point of view, that's the problem we have nowadays. We are too in an era where we have too much ideologies and not so much ideas. To have a vision, we must know the reality and then imagine a new one, exactly like prisoners in Iran are doing right now, and especially with the movement against executions, the Tuesdays against execution movement.
Yeah.
Despite the tragic situation they are living directly, they have still the force to imagine a new country
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
fight for them. So, and that's why I always repeat, we must take them as an example, just to give a reference to what is happening in the last 2 days, as a reaction to the executions of Mehdi Asani and Behrouz Asani. The Kerchak prison, many prisons, but especially the Kerchak prison and the Greater Tehran prison, stand up stronger to react. And in fact, in the message, in the statement of prisoners of today, they underline the need to don't let the sacrifice to be vain and stay strong more than ever in occasion of such more atrocities having committed by the regime. So, and the idea I have, I would like to return to the window view made over UK and the situation of migration in UK, which is not the unique country, unfortunately, in Europe using migration as a threat to security instead to a humanitarian humanity issue, not humanitarian, humanity issue. So, but what is, in my view, as advocate for progress, not for growth, simply growth, but advocate for progress.
Yeah.
The gravity of situation in some European country, including UK, and I say UK as not as a member of EU, but geographically in Europe, located in Europe, is that the majority of that decision in the past and right now have been taken from so-called progressive forces. The recent reform of immigration, for example, is from a laborist government, which is supposed to be a force for social justice. So the point is that we must stop with ideologies and to return to the idea, but to return to the ideas, we must return to the side of people, starting from people of Iran.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful statement that you've made, that we have to have the interests of people at the forefront of anything that we do, you know. And once we start thinking about people, then all of these ideologies become secondary, because I mean, a country like Iran, I mean, you can see how much damage this regime has done over the course of, you know, over 4 decades or 45 years. And it is simply because they want to remain in power. They're not accountable. So I think that, and as you rightly mentioned, this no to execution movement, I think that is a brilliant movement that reflects the dignity and the solidarity amongst prisoners, even in the face of such brutal repression. And I think we have to applaud it. And I think we need to make it more recognized the world over. We have to salute the courage and bravery of these prisoners who have stood up for a very principled position, for a very important cause. And the cause is not simply about themselves. It is about the rights of every person who's detained and every person who's threatened with execution. So I think that it is our duty as human rights activists to really salute and honor these people and make it global, because I'm not sure if every society is fully aware of this particular movement. But we have to make aware, and in doing so, we also have to champion the cause that they are promoting. I still remember what the Human Rights Committee said some time back, and in fact, this was echoed in the statement of the High Commissioner just yesterday, that the death penalty is incompatible to human rights and human dignity. That is so fundamental, and this change has to take place. We cannot allow the death penalty to continue, because it violates all aspects of our existence, human existence.
It's the ideal form of torture.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And so we have to campaign. We have to promote this particular movement, and also we have to work towards the abolition of the death penalty, across the world.
Thank you very much for saying that. I would love to stay hours talking with you, and because even if we are talking about the tragic reality, we are in every case trying to pass a message of positivity despite the situation.
Yeah.
So I would like never stop to talk to you, actually,
Yeah,
and I do really hope we will have more occasion to speak and
I
join
hope
efforts.
so. I really want to thank you, and I thank the people who are working for this important cause, for the prisoners, and this No to Execution Tuesday movement. And I will do everything to support this movement, and let us work towards the abolition of the death penalty everywhere in the world.
Thank you very much for your contribution, for your words and your support. So I just would like to ask you a few direct words to people of Iran because we use at the end to ask to our guests to send a direct message to them. And so please.
Yeah. So my direct message to the people of Iran, and in particular, as we are discussing the Tuesdays Against Execution campaign, my message is that I salute and I greatly value the bravery and courage of the political prisoners. As I said to you, I was heartbroken when I looked at the video of Mariam. And I think that I salute her as well, her courage, her family's courage. And of course, this is a big tragedy in her life and in the lives of many others. But this should inspire us to ensure that not another life is taken by this brutal regime. Let us work together. Let us campaign. Let us fight harder. Let us work towards the ultimate abolition, and do everything that is possible. And also to say that we are with the Iranian people. During this discussion, I have praised the Iranian people, because I know for the years that I have worked with them, that they're truly brave people. In the face of such oppression, they are standing up. They are resisting this brutal regime. And I salute them, I honor them, and I tell them that we are not that far away from the ultimate freedom. And I believe that the Iranian people ultimately have the right. They have the right to determine their own destiny. This brutal regime needs to be removed, and the Iranian people must decide for themselves. And this is so much aligned to what we know of international law. The right to self-determination is the first right that is written in the international covenants, which are ratified by a vast majority of states. So the Iranian people must be assured that they have this right to determine their own future. They will decide. And I promise them that there will be a day soon that they will have their freedoms back, and they will have the freedom given back to them. And we will support them as international community.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor, for your words. I am absolutely sure that it would be another one more element to stay strong for people of Iran. So before to conclude our day, we had the very great privilege to have you, and thank you again to be connected so late.
No, it's absolutely fine.
And I know what it means because I did the Professor. Thank you very much for this. Very emotional.
You're most welcome.
So before to conclude, let me send my message to people of Iran. Today, I maybe I appeared more with more rage than other days, but today it's a very sad day to me. And thank you to mention Mariam. We are all Mariam. I can tell this as a woman. We are all Mariam. I cannot imagine the hard time she is passing now, she and her family. So my message is for her to stay strong and to believe that the life of her father is an example of freedom, not just for people of Iran, but for the entire world. This is just what I feel to say, because there's actually no words for what happened. I was involved into the campaign to try to stop that brutal assassination, but it was
could not.
The result was to transform those persons as one more example of fight for freedom. So my call upon the international community, upon people all around the world is please don't let their sacrifice to be vain. Stand up with us. And my call to the so-called progressive forces in place to make the difference, to stand up on the right side of history, not to say, okay, we are trying to do something, because while you are trying, people is continuing dying everywhere, in Iran, in Gaza. Let me make reference also to them. If we want a just world, we must fight for him. And to fight for him, we need people of value, like people of Iran. Thank you very much to stay with us today. And Professor, I hope we join forth very soon. Thank you very much, and see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.